The twin suns of Karath 7 burned without mercy over the endless dunes. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the crumbling walls of Outpost Meridian and watched the alien army stretch across the horizon like a dark ocean. The Varathian Empire had sent everything they had. Thousands of soldiers, hundreds of war machines, all for one small fortress in the middle of nowhere. She counted 43 human defenders remaining. 43 against an army of 12,000. The siege had begun 62 days ago. 62 days of constant bombardment. 62 days of rationing water and ammunition. 62 days of watching friends die one by one while the enemy waited outside their walls. Sergeant Marcus Chun climbed up the ladder and stood beside her. His face was thin from hunger, and his uniform was torn in many places. A bloody bandage covered his left eye. He had lost it during the third assault when a plasma round exploded too close. "They are forming up again," Marcus said. "Looks like another major push." Elena nodded slowly. She had seen these formations before. The Varathians were patient creatures. They had skin like gray stone and 4 arms that could each hold a weapon. Their generals believed in wearing down enemies through endless attacks. They did not understand why these humans refused to surrender. "How much ammunition do we have left?" Elena asked. "Maybe enough for 2 more hours of heavy fighting. After that, we go to knives and fists." She almost smiled at that. The idea of fighting these massive aliens with bare hands should have been funny. But she had seen her soldiers do exactly that during the 5th assault. Private Torres had killed 3 Varathians with nothing but a broken rifle and pure rage before they finally brought him down. The Varathians had stopped advancing for a full day after that. They could not understand what kind of creatures would fight so desperately for a worthless patch of desert. But it was not worthless. Not to the humans. Outpost Meridian sat above the largest underground water source on the entire planet. 2 million human colonists lived in the cities beyond the mountain range to the east. If the Varathians captured this fortress, they would control the water. They would control everything. The evacuation ships had come and gone 3 weeks ago. Elena had sent away the wounded and the children who had been trapped at the outpost when the siege began. She had refused to leave herself. So had everyone else who could still hold a weapon. High Command had ordered them to abandon the fortress. They had told Elena that reinforcements were at least 30 days away. She had simply turned off the communication system after that. There was no point in arguing with officers who were safe in their comfortable ships while her people bled in the sand. A horn sounded across the desert. The Varathian attack was beginning. Elena grabbed her rifle and shouted the order her soldiers had heard dozens of times. "All positions. Make every shot count." The defenders moved with practiced efficiency. They knew their jobs. They knew the walls. They knew exactly where to aim when the enemy came rushing forward. 62 days of fighting had turned them into something more than soldiers. They had become a single organism with one purpose: survive long enough to matter. The first wave of Varathians charged across the open ground. Their war cries echoed off the fortress walls. Behind them, massive artillery machines began firing. The sky turned orange with plasma rounds. Elena took aim and fired. A Varathian soldier fell. She fired again. Another fell. Around her, the other defenders did the same. Bodies began piling up in front of the walls. But there were too many enemies. There had always been too many enemies. The Varathians reached the walls and began climbing. Their 4 arms made them excellent climbers. Elena switched to her sidearm and shot one directly in the face as it appeared over the edge. Marcus stabbed another with his combat knife. An explosion somewhere to the left told her that someone had used one of their few remaining grenades. The fighting became close and brutal. A Varathian grabbed Elena by the throat and lifted her off her feet. She could feel her bones grinding together. Her vision started going dark. Then Marcus appeared behind the creature and drove his knife into its neck. The alien dropped her and collapsed. She gasped for breath and immediately picked up her weapon again. There was no time to thank him, no time for anything except fighting. The assault lasted for 3 hours. When it finally ended, the Varathians retreated back across the desert to regroup. They left behind over 600 dead soldiers. The humans had lost 9 more defenders. 34 remained. Dr. Sarah Wong moved through the wounded with empty hands. She had run out of medical supplies days ago. All she could offer now were bandages torn from dead soldiers and words of comfort that felt hollow even to her. "Commander," she said quietly when she reached Elena, "Lieutenant Patterson did not survive. Internal bleeding. There was nothing I could do." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. Patterson had been with her since the colony ship arrived 5 years ago. He had a wife and 2 children in New Hope City. They would never see him again. "Thank you, Doctor," Elena said. Her voice was steady. She could not afford to show weakness. "Please make sure his personal effects are secured for his family." That night, the defenders gathered in the main courtyard. There was very little food left. Some dried protein bars, a few containers of water. Not nearly enough for everyone to eat properly. Elena looked at their faces in the dim light. Young faces and old faces. Scared faces and determined faces. These were ordinary people who had become extraordinary through suffering. They had every reason to give up. Nobody would have blamed them for surrendering, but not one of them had even suggested it. Private Jackson, barely 19 years old, stood up and raised his water container. "To the fallen," he said simply. "To the fallen," the others repeated. They drank together in silence. Then they returned to their positions to wait for the next attack. The Varathian commander was a veteran named HFY. He had conquered 17 worlds for the Empire. He had never faced an enemy like this. He stood in his command tent and stared at the reports from his officers. Over 4,000 soldiers lost, 12 war machines destroyed. All for one small fortress defended by creatures that seemed incapable of understanding defeat. His second-in-command entered and saluted with all 4 arms. "Supreme Commander, our scouts report that human reinforcements are still many days away. We can simply wait them out." HFY shook his massive head. "No, we end this tomorrow. I want every soldier in the final assault. Every weapon, everything. But Supreme Commander, the losses would be significant. I do not care about losses. I want that fortress and everyone inside it destroyed completely. These humans must learn that resistance against the Empire is pointless." But deep inside, HFY felt something he had never experienced before. Something that might have been fear. Not fear of losing. He knew he would win eventually. Fear of what these humans represented. Fear of what might happen if this kind of determination spread to other worlds the Empire had conquered. They had to be destroyed, all of them, so completely that no story of their resistance would survive. The final assault came at dawn. Elena watched the entire Varathian army advance toward her walls. 10,000 soldiers moving together. The ground shook under their feet. The air filled with their war cries and the roar of their weapons. She had 28 defenders left. Some of them could barely stand. Almost everyone was wounded in some way. Their ammunition was nearly gone. But they were all at their positions. Every single one. "It has been an honor," Elena said over the communication system. Her voice was calm and clear. "Whatever happens today, remember that we bought time for our people. We gave them a chance to escape. That matters. We matter." The Varathians hit the walls from all sides simultaneously. There was no tactical finesse this time. No careful probing attacks. Just overwhelming force designed to crush any resistance. The defenders fought back with everything they had. Rifles fired until they ran dry. Then pistols. Then knives. Then fists and teeth and fingernails. Private Jackson held his section of wall for 20 minutes with nothing but a metal pipe. He killed 11 Varathians before they finally overwhelmed him. He died screaming defiance at them. Dr. Wong picked up a weapon for the first time in her life. She shot 7 attackers before a plasma round took her arm off. She kept fighting with one hand until blood loss made her collapse. Sergeant Chun stood back to back with 3 other soldiers in the courtyard. They fought in perfect coordination, covering each other, refusing to fall. One by one, his companions died around him. He fought alone for another 5 minutes before a Varathian blade finally pierced his heart. Elena was the last one standing. She had a knife in her hand and blood running down her face. Around her lay the bodies of her soldiers and hundreds of dead Varathians. Her fortress was burning. Her people were gone, but she was still standing. Kethvio himself came to face her, the supreme commander of the invasion force, against one wounded human woman. "Surrender," he commanded. "You have lost. There is no more reason to fight." Elena looked up at the massive alien. She was barely conscious. Every part of her body screamed with pain. She knew she had no chance against him. "You still do not understand us," she said. Her voice was weak but clear. "We were never fighting to win. We were fighting to show you that we will never stop, never surrender, never give up. You can take this fortress. You can take this planet. But there will always be another fortress. Another group of humans who will make you bleed for every meter of ground." She raised her knife and charged at him. Kethvio killed her quickly. It was the only mercy he had ever shown an enemy. The fortress fell. The siege was over. But Deveo stood among the ruins for a long time afterward. He looked at the bodies of the defenders. He counted them. 43 humans against his entire army. And they had cost him nearly half his force. The story spread despite his efforts to suppress it. It spread to every corner of the empire. It spread to every world where humans lived under Varathian rule. It spread to places where rebellion had never seemed possible before. When the human reinforcements finally arrived 3 days later, they found the fortress destroyed and every defender dead. They also found a Varathian army that had pulled back into the desert and seemed unwilling to advance. The colonists were safe. The water source remained in human hands. And across the galaxy, other humans heard about what 43 people had accomplished in a forgotten desert fortress. They had not just fought until the end. They had shown the entire universe what humanity was capable of when pushed to the breaking point. And the Varathians, for the first time in their long history of conquest, began to wonder if perhaps they had chosen the wrong enemy.